I never thought that I'd end up with a Lumix as my primary hybrid camera, but here we are with the S1 II. I haven't done a full review of it, so I wanted to go a little bit in depth with David Altizer. Hey, David, how's it going?
Hi, welcome to Full Stack Creator. I'm also a Lumix guy. I've got an S9 here. We're shooting, I think we're both shooting on Lumix cameras. Lots to talk about today.
We are. I never thought I'd be a Lumix guy. I mean, I didn't even know any Lumix people. Like, it is not the winning the brand wars, but it's been a great camera to me. And so I'd love to explain why.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into that topic. But before we do, I have a little game for you, Tyler. Are you ready for this?
Oh, let's do it.
And I'm going to name a camera, and then I'll name another one, and you pick the best one.
What I would like to actually use in real life.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and sometimes cost doesn't have anything to do with that in terms of what your enjoyment level is. So with that in mind, we're going to do Red Komodo X or Nikon ZR.
Okay. Interesting choice. I'll be practical here and I'll say the Nikon.
Okay, so Nikon ZR or the Canon C80.
It's getting tougher. I'd go with the C80, internal ND.
C80 or FX3.
C80.
C80 or FX6.
Still the C80.
Okay, C80 or Lumix S1 II.
Now we're getting a little tougher because it's opening up some more possibilities. I'm going to go with the S1 II here.
Okay, yeah, it's a photo camera. S1 II or R6 Mark III from Canon.
I'd stick with the S1 II.
S1 II or A7 IV from Sony.
S1 II.
S1 II or S1 II from Lumix.
I've had to face this question myself. I mean, I think in real life I'm choosing the S1 II a lot.
Okay, so we're now on to the S1 II or the Fuji X100 VI.
S1 II.
What about the Leica Q3?
Oh, now you're really making it tough for me. I mean, I'll just go with my instincts here. Q3.
Okay, Leica Q3 or Hasselblad X2D?
Oh man, you're twisting my torture. Q3.
Q3 or Leica M11?
Q3.
All right, Q3 or Red V Raptor XL?
Oh. This isn't a fair game at all. I'll just Q3.
Q3 or Arri Alexa Mini LF? Final question.
Oh, come on. Just Q3. I mean, I don't have a crew. It's just me out there. I can't.
And the winner is the Leica Q3.
I guess somehow that's where we ended up. Yeah.
That's really interesting because you have one, don't you? Wasn't that a gift that from your lovely wife to you for something?
It was. Yeah, for birthday. And it just gets used the most. That's why I had to keep picking it, because I just want to pick it up all the time. And it's not that there aren't so many other great cameras or even cameras and maybe even using more. I think the S1 II gets more total use time, but it's, it feels more like work. And the Q3 is kind of like, that's my time off camera in a way. So I just enjoy it a lot.
I love that 28mm focal length. I don't have a Leica Q3, but I have the Olympus OM3. And I really love that camera, and I'm using the 15mm Leica Panasonic lens, which is like a 30mm, which is roughly a 28. And there is something really fun about that focal length. And I don't know why people don't make more 28mm primes. I think they need to be on there's not a Lumix 28 that exists on the full frame, at least.
Well, it's really become my go-to. I've recently picked up the Hasselblad 38V, which is equivalent to 30mm in full frame. And then my go-to Lumix all the time is the 24. So obviously it's a little bit different, but like any on-the-road YouTube videos that you see where I'm like recording in hotel rooms, things like that, that's always the 24mm because it's kind of the closest to 28. But it feels like the right balance to me. I use it all the time.
Well, I guess in the way that you're saying that, it feels right. Here we are with the Lumix system. Both you and I started out with Canons. I was a C70 shooter for a couple of years, and so were you. I was, using the EOS R when the mirrorless transition happened. I never really got fully on the Sony bandwagon. Dabbled in Nikon a little bit, but it wasn't until Lumix came out with the S5 II that I started really just diving deep into Lumix. And even though I had a C70, I found myself picking up the Lumix S5 II when the autofocus update came out several years ago now. And ever since then, it's just kind of been like my go-to system. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And obviously, you've got the S1 II and some experience with the newer models. So, yeah, where do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's good to start with is clarifying a little bit of how we both ended up with Lumix was a bit of a win for Lumix marketing, because they, I think, reached out to both of us and, provided some of the first lenses and cameras that we were using with them. And I would not have been looking at them otherwise. So this is just a disclaimer that
Yes.
I didn't go and buy my first Lumix. I picked up some things since. They've sent some as review units, but it really was this I'm not even curious about what Panasonic's doing. I don't care. And they reached out and were like, look, we've got something new. We think this might be interesting to you. We really want you to try it out. So we're going to provide you with some stuff. And it just really, it worked. I had a complete Canon kit, multiple Canon kits in a way. I still have some Canons. I've got Fuji's, I've got a lot of cameras around. But somehow the Lumix worked its way into my primary hybrid workflow. So I think that says a lot that the up-and-comer was able to sort of take over as what I reached for most of the time. And the reason that it's the S1 II I really want to talk about, S5 II has been great. I've talked about it before, but this feels a bit like, it's kind of like the culmination of, we're at a comfortable, not a plateau, but it has it all at this point. We're not missing any really significant features. It doesn't feel like I'm missing out. I don't wish for more, which I think I did with the S5 II. There's always a few things this isn't the top of the line. It's not a flagship. It is, kind of a prosumer camera. Some of the frame rates weren't there, but the quality was there. Yeah. And now with the S1 II and the S1R2, we've just sort of arrived that for a period, even maybe right now, it was or is the best. It has the most features. It has more than even Sony is offering. So that's very impressive to me.
Yeah, and I would argue that the S5 II is enough in terms of the image quality. And yes, there's some frame rate limitations, but if you're never dealing with higher frame rates, like myself, I'm usually just doing talking head pieces like this for YouTube videos. It's more than enough. But it was missing some of those flagship features like a high quality EVF, and then of course the 32-bit float recording, and that's where the S1 IIe comes into play. And that's actually a camera that I'm considering getting because it's $1,000 cheaper, and it gives me all those flagship kind of features that the body gives you. And they've got that airy log profile as well, which my friend Connor shoots everything on now. I don't know if you've experimented with that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But we're here to primarily talk about the S1 II, but we could kind of dabble around talking about all these different cameras, right?
I think it's great to give the E some love, which I haven't tried it in person, so I am not totally familiar with it. But I absolutely can speak to the body of the S1 II, and it's a lot of what makes it so great is that it has the full package now. I was getting to the point that any screen that didn't fully flip out and articulate in any direction, just is kind of unacceptable to me. I need it to be able to do all that so that when I'm shooting video, I want the screen to be horizontal and behind the lens. It really kind of frustrates me having it flipped out and beside the lens. And then I still shoot vertical all the time. So then you need it to articulate in the flip screen way. So, this is something that I think Sony got there first with the flip screen, but it's become table stakes for me. Every camera needs to be able to rotate in this way to really be fully usable. So having that, again, like you said, the S5 II sensor is good enough for most things. And $1,000 is a lot of money to save. That's actually, I didn't even remember that it was so much less. So that's an awesome deal. And maybe the S1 II deserves more attention because of that. But, let's make sure that we just cover some the big flagship things here of why is this worth talking about? Okay. So megapixels on the S1 II is 24, which is kind of what I think we're all deciding is just enough. It's the minimum. I don't think I want to go too much below that. The Sonys that shoot 12 megapixel, to me, now you are cutting yourself off from doing any photography work with it. But at 24, you're not. This is a photo camera. You can deliver it to clients, and it's not really limiting you.
Hold on. Sorry, Tyler, to interrupt you, but I did do a quick fact check, and it does look like I was a little off on the price difference. The S1 IIe is certainly cheaper, but it's not $1,000 cheaper. It's about $500 to $600 cheaper, depending on sales that are going on. So still enough to use that money towards a lens.
It might be $1,000 in Canadian dollars. So
yeah, fair enough.
But
fair
good
enough.
to know. Okay. But still, we'll mostly focus on the S1 II because that's really what I know here. But what do you think about megapixels though? Like when I say like 24 is enough, do you agree? I mean,
Oh,
we should do
absolutely.
a whole episode on how many is enough, but
Yeah, I think it is, and it's been kind of proven to be so because we've seen between 24 to like 30, 34-ish to be kind of that sweet spot. I remember what was the 5D Mark IV was like 32 or something like that. Like I remember that was like a big deal, and it was like, okay, this is already more than we need. And then obviously we've got these high resolution sensors now too, but those are almost like to have 50 megapixels or more, like the R5 or the A7R and so on. Like it's almost like a niche camera. Like we don't really need that. It's nice to have it, I guess, right? But it's
here's my big complaint though. So I'm used to shooting the R5. That's what I was using for a long time. And Canon has always had both options for compressed RAW and also small, medium, and large RAW, where your file size and the actual resolution is reduced, but it's still a RAW file. And I would usually shoot in the smaller options a lot of the time. But then there's the job you get where like, this is going to be printed big, or I might need to aggressively crop, right? Like there are definitely times that I've had clients where 24 would I could get it by, but it's starting to compromise the image quality a little bit, and I do want more. Like 25 is the deliverable amount of megapixels, but I want to capture more. So with the S1, S1R,
the
S1 II R,
S1 II R, right? Yeah.
thanks. It's got the pixels, but you can't reduce the file size. Like everything is big. That frustrates me, and I'd love to see Lumix open up some of those options, because that's actually part of the reason I reach for the S1 II so often, is that I just want my file sizes to be bigger. You know, if I'm going to pop off 1,000 frames, they can be 30 megabytes instead of 60 megabytes each. So often I don't need the extra megapixels. So if they could give me those additional raw sizing choices, then that would make the S1 II-R a little more flexible and more usable. But yeah.
And then, of course, there's some of the overheating issues for video that kind of seem to plague the S1 II for a while. But based on some current findings with firmware updates, they seem to have solved that. But I still think the S1 II is the flagship video hybrid camera from Lumix right now.
I did just say it wrong again. S1R2. Anyway. Yes. Yeah, I think so too. I actually never ran into any of those overheating issues, just for the record. Like because I've said a lot of good things about the S1R2, and it never overheated for me. So yeah. I don't know.
You live in Canada,
yes, that's probably half the reason. But the S1 II also never overheated. So it's been pretty amazing. What else makes it? I think it's good to frame, like, why does this stand out over a Sony? Maybe that's the best example, because like people love Sonys, they love their FX3s, which have been, I mean, the amount of FX3s that have been sold and just like how much it stood the test of time. People still list it as their dream camera today. And I mean, as of recording, it's 5 years old. I don't know how old it is really, but it's many years old. It's
the A7S3 came out in 2020. I remember very vividly when it happened.
Yeah,
so it's that same sensor.
That's wild. Yeah. And I kind of prefer the A7S3. That form factor makes more sense to me. I find it a bit more usable.
Yeah, you get an EVF.
But yeah, totally. I mean, I use those. It's very helpful. Okay, but what are we missing here? Like the big stuff that's not in an FX3. Something I use all the time is the stabilization in Lumix, which you can attest to. And it's a lot of what ends up keeping us there. Yeah. Yeah, I just get used to like not using a tripod nearly as much, not bringing a gimbal with me. I mean, it really starts to change how you shoot. Or for me anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether you're using an anamorphic lens like our friend Cam Mackey and many others, Lumix has incredible stabilization, best in class, arguably. And, I've done some shoots, some professional shoots where we were shooting on Sony cameras and the footage was just too shaky, even with a gimbal. And it was so, those little micro jitters were in there. It was so bad that we had to go into Sony Catalyst Browse, which it's nice that they have that, where Catalyst Browse kind of hooks into the, like, I don't even know, the gyro data or something, the accelerometer data. And it applies like a de-warp and a stabilization based on the gyro data. And it looks great, but it's kind of like, cool, that look is what Lumix looks like in camera. Like they're applying the gyro data and the sensor stabilization data and all that together in camera, and it looks great. And even all the way down to, like, for me as a dad, like just filming videos, like home videos, like this little S9 right here has become my primary little dad cam. You know, I just filmed my kids running around the house, and I shoot in another feature that I really love, which is the open gate shooting mode. It fills the frame a lot more, and I'm using often too for like lower end productions that nice 3.8K compressed codec. So, but anyways, we're talking about stabilization right now, but it's really an incredible thing. And you could get a lens like this 18 millimeter or like Tyler's 24 millimeter, and on a wide angle with the electronic stabilization, you can get really fluid gimbal-like shots. It's kind of magical.
Yeah, and it's something I've talked about with the iPhone a lot too. Like when people shoot videos with, or any cell phone, when you shoot videos with your phone, you're taking for granted just how much stabilization is happening. I think people don't even know that there is any. But try turning it off, which you can. You can shoot with software that has no stabilization in your phone. All of a sudden, you realize it's doing half the work, and it's actually making it look like you've got a gimbal. So yeah, Lumix is sort of the closest that we have in larger sensor cameras. Olympus is also good, but they only make the Micro Four Thirds.
Yeah.
So, okay, beyond stabilization, what are the other really key things here? I mean, a huge part of the conversation when the Sony S1 II came out was open gate. Mm-hmm. So I kind of don't want to open the can of worms of like, you know,
sure.
And I know people are arguing a lot over like how important is it, but Lumix has really led the way with that. They've had it in many different cameras for a while now. It's not an essential feature. The main thing I actually use it for, that it's become important, is my overhead shot. So when I'm recording at the studio in my other setup, I have a permanent G9 II that's always set up there looking down. And being able to shoot in almost a square format is the best for an overhead, because it means you can use your unboxing in an Instagram reel, or you can just reframe, because it's when you're not looking, like if you're not monitoring properly, it's very easy to move things in and out of frame and just get it wrong. So having that extra space vertically, I use that constantly. It's super helpful. So, in that one situation for me, it's become essential.
One of the features with the open gate, one of the use cases with the open gate for me that has been phenomenal is there's a couple of clients I work with that they love using screenshots from the video for their social posts. And since I'm there and I'm filming them running around and stuff, I just switched to open gate 6K, and I switch my shutter angle to instead of the 180 degree shutter angle mode, I just switch to the standard shutter speed, and I'll crank my shutter up just a little bit, shoot at like 1/100th of a second, so it's a little bit sharper frames.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'll basically just give them a color graded version of that, and then they'll just go through on their timeline and just pull out. They basically have hundreds, thousands of pictures that they can pull out. Right. And because it's a square, tall format, it's just so useful for them to use for social posting and for Instagram posts, behind the scenes, stuff like that. So that's not really a use case I see talked about that often. Like using it for photography purposes as like an additional thing to pull from your video. And that's been a really useful thing for me.
Well, along with that is also the resolution. So it shoots at, up to 6K, which is great. And not all the Sonys get that far. It's not really essential, but once you start having some of these features on modern cameras that are similarly priced, you start looking at the others and you're like, well, why doesn't it have it? Why can't I do the same thing on all of them? That's why, I prefer this 24 megapixels over 12, because it just gives a little more room for features like that. I do have a complaint about the way resolution works, especially on this camera. On the newer Lumixes, they're starting to have so many resolution and frame rate combos that the menu for selecting them it breaks my brain.
Yes.
And I was really struggling the other day to figure out, like, okay, this camera does shoot in 4K 120. How do I get there? How do I get to it? I kept ending up in a frame rate combo that was giving me like 70 frames per second. And then I'd switch to SNQ mode and I could find one that got me to 90. And I had to like do some filtering and digging. And it's like, I need a little bit of a simpler way to actually get to the ones that I want. And I can save my favorite frame rates into a quick menu, but I got to do that. It's on my to-do list.
With the advent of all this AI technology, could we not just have like a little microphone that's built into the back of the camera? You just talk to it and it's
voice control.
Switch to 4K 120, please. And it just does it.
Bad. I like that idea.
But yeah, you're right. I think they need to work on that. I think, pro tip, if Lumix is listening, maybe organize it by resolution, so you could have like 6K, 4K, 1080. And then within each one of those is a drop down of the frame rates that you can choose. And then from there,
it's kind of like a Fuji does it. I like the Fuji
exactly.
menus kind of guide you through the selection.
Because like certain compression codecs only give you 120. But I feel like if I want to shoot 120, that's the priority over the compression. So like, it's not up to me to like memorize which compression setting it is. I just want 4K 120. So I should be able to choose 4K and then frame rate 120. And then it says, okay, these are your compression settings to get that if you want it, 10-bit or 8-bit. And then you just go from there.
Well, also changing topics real quick. Color science is a thing people talk about a lot. And I kind of think they talk about it almost more than they need to in a way, because this was really important a few years ago when cameras were all shooting 8-bit. You kind of have to use the built-in color science of the camera, like it was making all the decisions. Now, all these cameras we're comparing right now will shoot at least 10-bit log video. The raw files, the photos are, raw 12, 14-bit. Like there's so much data in them that the actual color science, like it only matters if you're shooting JPEGs. Most of us aren't, especially most of the people that really care about color science. First, I'd say that the Lumix is just on par with everything else. There's nothing at all inferior about it. It is slightly different from Canon, slightly different from Sony, or even Hasselblad and Lumix. There are some differences, especially Hasselblad and Lumix treat colors a little differently, but they're not inherently better. And the raw files are just as flexible as anything else. So, I'm only bringing it up to say, I think it gets too much of an emphasis, but you can turn all of the files into anything you want. And final note, if anybody hasn't seen that Cine D dynamic range test, the S1 II can match the dynamic range of the Alexa Mini, which is kind of insane.
Well, not only that, if we're on the topic of color tone and color science, these new bodies, all the S1 II bodies, have now literally partnered with ARRI, and they're doing ARRI Alexa log. So I would love to hear what your experience has been like with that. Have you done any tests with the ARRI log profile?
Yeah, so I've definitely tested it, and I've used it in a couple projects. The main reason I'm not using it full time is I've just got some LUTs dialed in with the Lumix Vlog that I already know that I like. I know how they're going to come out, and so I have a workflow. But the advantage of the ARRI Log C, it's not that you're going to get a better final image. Like it's that it's more about being the industry standard, and you can work with other standardized software that is already tuned well for Log C. I think if you look at the default conversion LUT, like let's say you're just, monitoring Vlog, which is Panasonic's, and then you're monitoring Log C, and you look at them next to each other, the ARRI one looks nicer as a default, but you're not usually using the default. You're applying some LUT in post-production, you're color grading in DaVinci Resolve. So in those cases, it's more about standardizing. So it's not life-changing, but it does allow the camera to be used in more professional workflows. More professional colorists are used to Log C. They don't have to learn how to use Vlog. So I really like this idea, especially, I keep hearing how ARRI's struggling. The way they're doing licensing, I think, is the right way, because the color science actually matches their bigger cameras. Whereas not every licensing model, like some of the cell phone licenses, they don't all work that way.
Yeah, well, this is a sidebar, but I did see news that ARRI is partnering with some random Android cell phone manufacturer.
Yeah, with Honor. Yeah, no, I'm curious. I want to try it out.
Yeah, that would be cool. My friend Connor McCaskill, our mutual friend Connor McCaskill, he has switched to shooting ARRI Log C full time on his S1 cameras because he just said, yeah, I found like an ARRI LUT that I love, and there is a little bit of mojo to the image that he can't really put his finger on, that he's like, there is some sort of color thing going on here that's like really nice. So apparently the engineers over at ARRI did have their hand in developing this. It's not just like a random little like LUT that's in the camera. It really is like a color science tuning that they did. And, you could argue that those guys and girls are some of the best in the industry, so you can kind of trust their judgment with the way they push and pull the image. So it's definitely something I would love to try out.
Yeah, no, I think it was really smart. So I think, if we're going to kind of sum up everything about the S1 II, the reason I wanted to talk about it is I haven't felt this sort of satisfaction with my main hybrid camera in quite a while. I don't have this constant need to upgrade. I'm not as curious about what the latest are, the other cameras being released, because it's just like, I kind of have everything covered right now, which I've just never had that feeling before. That's like, this is doing it all. Like,
I've never
things
felt
it's missing,
content.
no, exactly. It's missing internal ND. The lens lineup isn't as robust as Sony. In some ways I prefer it. Like we didn't even mention the lenses, which are kind of standardized. Most of them are almost all exactly the same size. So if you're using a gimbal and you switch them, the weight balance is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe even more importantly, the diameter of the front is the same on everything. 67 millimeters. So that means I just have like one ND filter. I can use the same variable ND and just put it on all of the lenses, which I think is extremely underrated. Like when I'm switching back to using a Canon or a Sony, I'm like, oh wait, this zoom lens is 82 millimeters. My other zoom lens is 77. And then my primes are 72 and the other prime is 60. Like it's actually really frustrating. And nobody seems to complain about it.
That's where internal ND solves that problem, though. That's why I loved 100%. Using the C70, was for that exact reason. I could hop between lenses and I didn't have to worry about adapters or messing with filters. But yeah, I guess in a way, I never really thought about it before. But yeah, because the lenses are the same filter thread, that makes it that much easier to swap between them. But if there was some sort of way to put some sort of ND on the sensor or behind the sensor mount, I still would love that. I mean, if there's a way for them to figure out the technology to do that while maintaining the same IBIS and all that, like that would be that really would be like, okay, we're getting to the next level of like, that would force me to upgrade if they did that.
Yeah.
So
that is on my wish list. I would upgrade for that.
But what are your thoughts on the audio interface? Have you messed around with the 32-bit float? Because now they're offering that, but it's still in a weird way. I'd say maybe this might even be considered a con. If you look at the Nikon ZR, any microphone that's plugged in over that little 1/8" jack is 32-bit float, whereas with the Lumix, you have to use their dedicated XLR hot shoe adapter thing, or this new, did you see this? This new circular weird microphone, which looks interesting, but when it came out, I was like, that's a microphone. It's like, I'm not like over the moon about that product, but they did it. They made a thing.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't know that the Nikon was doing that, but that's good context to have, because a lot of the time I am using more and more just of the small portable wireless mics that are becoming 32-bit float as well, so they can record 32-bit internally. That's another feature that's just becoming table stakes. Like we're getting used to it. Every mic and every audio capturing device should have that.
I use the Tentacle syncs. I bought 6 of these back when these came out, and I don't have any need to update them because they're just so reliable and so great. But yeah, 32-bit float is really game-changing, and I think it's in all the NLEs now. Premiere, Resolve, Final Cut, it's all there. So clipping your audio isn't a thing anymore, really.
Yeah, it's just an old thing, totally. So, I mean, you're right. It could be better integrated. The way I use it is in the audio, like the XLR adapter on top of the camera. And so because it's there and I just plug XLR in, I haven't noticed any deficiencies. It's been fantastic. I had one crazy thing, and then we should wrap up.
Sure.
I was trying to run this microphone. Where's my adapters? I moved them. I was trying to run the mic I'm talking to now, the Heil PR40, into that XLR receiver from Lumix and you need to crank up the gain on them, just like on your Shure SM7B. So I was adding a FET head or also a cloud lifter to get the signal up, and it was giving me the craziest radio interference, like a radio station of people talking would pick up in the background if I add a signal booster into the XLR adapter.
That's crazy.
But not into other receivers. So I mean, right now I'm going through the Rodecaster. That's XLR as well. I can add the booster in there. It's totally clean signal. But if I put that same booster into the XLR of the Lumix, it was actually my mic stand became a big antenna, and I was getting crazy.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, just people talking. I don't know. So there's a downside.
One of the things that I wish, because I don't own any of these new cameras, I have 2 S5 IIs and the S9, and I honestly, for my use case, I'm very satisfied with these cameras. But one of the things that I wish I had was a better EVF. Have you noticed that this newer flagship EVF is it up to par now with the best, or is it kind of okay? Like,
no, it's excellent. Yeah, it's really great. But I didn't have a big complaint with the S5 II. Maybe I'm just not snobby enough about
Okay. I like sharp. I like very sharp EVFs.
I also just don't have the best eyes. Like this might be a little bit of it, is that like sharpness doesn't, it's hard for me to see in a way. So maybe I'm just not sensitive enough to it. I know it's been improved, but when I switched from the S5 II, I didn't think about that change too much. So,
and one of the things, and you and I both have fun cameras. You have the Leica Q3, I have my OM3, and that was actually the missing ingredient to my life that I didn't know I needed. All of my S5 cameras are objectively better because they're full frame and my OM3 is micro four thirds, but I just literally get joy and I get excited and I get inspired when I'm holding that retro inspired little, OM3, and I love the like filmic look that it creates. And you've got your Q3, like these cameras, though they're like kind of excellent and I am very satisfied, I do feel like they do lack a little bit of fun, but also...
Yeah, there's no personality.
I would say they probably do have a little more personality than like a Sony, but still, these are like basically the best kind of glue cameras in your arsenal. You can buy a bunch of cheap S5 IIs with like 1 or 2 flagships if you have a big studio, if you're a wedding shooter, if you're, really just anything, any category. You could shoot a movie on these things, like real easy. So, But yeah, they are kind of like the perfect work tool. It's a truck, it's a minivan. It's like, it's not, you kind of like, at least for me, I needed a fun thing and I got a fun thing now. And that's made me just that much more content.
Well, we got to do an episode someday just all about compact fun cameras because I think about them a lot. Like I spend more time looking at them online than the important cameras I actually need for work.
When you have a camera that's superior sitting in front of you.
Exactly, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I think just maturing as an artist, I've learned, like, I used to always think it needs to be better to be better. Like the technology needs to be better for me to think it's better. But actually, now that I've matured as an artist and these tools have all matured, it's kind of like, well, actually, I can just choose the one that makes me happy. I don't need to choose the one that's quote unquote better. And that, I think that really does come from our experience being able to touch and play with so many different cameras where, like, if you haven't experienced everything, you might get, allured by the new thing. But anyways, I just think it's okay to use a camera that's quote unquote worse because you like it. That's totally fine.
For sure. Well, that is definitely going to have to be a coming episode because I got so much to say about it. But thanks for chatting about the S1 II with me, David. This is good to get it off my chest because I really like this camera.
We'll have to follow up when the S1 II comes out, hopefully soon. We'll see.
Yes, I hope someday. I hope that follow-up comes. If you want more of this, check us out on all the social platforms at Full Stack Creator Show. And if you want to learn how to make thumbnails that get clicks, check out David's thumbnailacademy.com. Or if you want beautiful LUTs and Lightroom presets for your photos and videos, head to Stalman.com/shop. If you want more of this, check us out on all the social platforms at Full Stack Creator Show. And if you want to learn how to make thumbnails that get clicks, check out David's thumbnailacademy.com. Or if you want beautiful LUTs and Lightroom presets for your photos and videos, head to Stalman.com/shop.